Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of the Neoliberal Round podcast. I am Ronaldo Mackenzie, and today I will be introducing my new book project entitled Privilege, Power, Position, and Status, and Secrets to Unlocking Divine Intervention. Today, I will be introducing my new book project, Privilege, Power, Position, and Status, and Secrets to Unlocking Divine Intervention. And, before I delve into it, it's quite remarkable what is happening in my life. It's quite remarkable what's happening in my life. As I write this, begin to think about this project, just today, just a few minutes ago, I got a call from Leader Press, and they reached out to me several times and so on. But I had a meeting with Leader Press, and Leader Press wants to work with me, and I discussed my book with them, and I actually decided I was going to do it as a podcast because I was speaking with the people at Leader Press and about the book, about my new book project, and they want to work with me, and they will be working with me. Now, just so you know, Leader Press, who is Leader Press? Leader Press is a USA Today and Wall Street Journal best-selling press, and they are a hybrid publishing company. They're not, and just so you know, when I started this company, when I wrote this book, Neoliberalism, Globalization, Income Inequality, Poverty and Resistance, which I'm impressed where it is, and tremendous opportunity for growth and for reach. But it's independently published by Palmetto in Charlotte, Carolina, and by the Neoliberal Corporation. It is, and it has been given some rave reviews. But most of the work, in a sense, it was self-published or independently published by me. Most of the funding, I funded it, and so on and so forth. And of course, the book is reputable and has tremendous integrity because it's based in certain perspective that is acceptable in academia. And I'm being choosy with my words because my new book project is about privilege and position, and I do not privilege anything. I don't believe in position, and I do not believe in status. So, because I believe those pose challenge for human society. They pose challenge for human society. And when you listen to this conversation I'm having with Leader Press about the idea of the new book, because I don't really I delve into it a little bit, but I don't delve into it. Now, I don't reveal too much, but I started thinking about this topic about some because I wanted my dissertation to be a revised or updated edition of the book that I have now, but as I began to study I did a course at Georgetown University called Doctor of Liberal Studies. Foundation 1, and everybody should do Foundation 1. It's a very interesting course, and several other courses. But I did this particular course, Liberal Foundation, and we are studying and looking at the foundations of society. We weren't studying the foundations, but I guess we were studying and reflecting upon them. But while studying and reflecting upon them, I came to understand or to realize a very important concept, which I will reveal. But this book is palpable, it's powerful, and I talk about why it is important, why I am doing this study. But I must say, this morning, I mean, some time ago I've been saying, God, please. I was praying. Some time ago I prayed. I said, God, I want to be contented. I don't want to be rich. But lately I've come to realize that that was a bad prayer because it was selfish. And not only that, because if I'm contented, I can only provide for myself, in a sense. I can't provide for others, and there are other persons who have reached out for help and I just can't help them, and when I can't help somebody, I feel impotent. That's the first. The second thing is, there is an opportunity. I see a need in my community. Say, for example, speaking with Lisa, and she said if you listen to the podcast episode, one of the podcast episode I did called Street Vibe, she talks about the fact that I think the podcast was towards the middle of the podcast, you have to really listen to the podcast or go directly to the segment. Sorry about that. I was speaking fast a bit. But she said that, the people in her community, they need connections. They don't come from privilege and position and so on. Connections, and there's a lack of critical analysis within our community and so on and so forth. And I added to that to say that there are people with the kind of work that I do. And just so you know, this book project, some of it is anthropological in a sense, because it's a social commentary. It's a commentary based on a kind of study that explores and compares principles and ideas, and we look at patterns in studies and so on. And of course, the second part of the book is definitely ethnographic, because we will be comparing, we will be journeying with people and trying to understand the views of people as it relates to ideas about society within their context. And so we will say that because we want to intersperse, we want to make comparisons about people's idea about this divine intervention. But it's very powerful, it's needed, because especially with what's going on in society today. And I will tell you, when you listen to this interview or this conversation I have with Leader Press, who is getting ready to engage with me in a partnership to publish this new book that I'm working on. When you listen, then you will hear me say that society is holding on a thread. The precipice of disaster. And I said in another article recently, in the Neoliberal Commentary, in LinkedIn, in my news feed, Neoliberal Commentary on LinkedIn, that when you have a society of race, that spells for disaster. And there is an image that I have concocted in my head from a Genesis scripture that talks about the Tower of Babel. When people had built edifices trying to reach heaven or to God. And the stories that God gave the people different languages and dispersed them because they were too united, and they were all united and they were heading closer. So that's what happened when people, that's one take of course, that's one idea. United we fall, united we stand, divided we fall. All these difference of languages came about, some people would say, because of that. But that's not the idea I'm lifting up here. But the idea I'm lifting up here is the fact that this Tower of Babel imagery suggests how powerful a people are, or a people is, or people will be if we are more united. If we can come together as one, but we have human prejudices. And which is steeped in ethnocentrism, which helps to position this kind of idea. So listen to this interview. It's powerful. This new book I'm doing, I don't delve too much into the book, but I was telling you, I didn't finish the story, but I was telling you, I prayed and asked God, please, allow me I want to be well. And then I said, let people see me. People are seeing me. But then I said, Lord, help me to get to the next level, because I want to add value to people's life. I want to add value to my community, because I have been, to whom much is given, much is required. Of course, one of my goals in life is to invest in others. So what has been invested in me so that others can realize their full potential. And there's a lot of potential in Philadelphia. There's a lot of potential in the world. There are a lot of potentials in communities. And so that gets overlooked oftentimes. And I say to people that this is a grassroots company. And what the good thing about it is that we connect with a lot of people on the ground and so on. When you have mainstream media overlook a lot of things that is important, social media, which is the victory for social movements and the mass of people in the world, because no one person controls the narrative. That's the problem. When one person controls the narrative, then what happens? I tell you that communication is to make popular what was the monopoly. You control the narrative, that means you have more power. But when control, when the monopoly, when information, the control of information is decentralized, it's no longer centralized, a lot more people have access to information, then it prevents privilege and position and status, and for people to skew or to turn the news in a particular way, because people have access to different outlets, and social media is really a victory. And you see what's going on in Russia, where Ukraine and many of these totalitarian countries, they go out of their way to limit people's access to information by having draconian policies that govern social media and so on. And even in America today, people are trying to develop policies that govern social media and so on and so forth, which in a sense probably may take which in a sense they're trying to wrest back control. They're trying to restore, in a sense, that's what policy does. It controls access. It limits access. In a sense, sometimes, in my estimation, it controls access. And when access is controlled, then what it does, then it centralizes information or the narrative. So you have to be suspicious and careful about this need and this drive for people, for the world to want to regulate social media and so on and so forth. So I had said that this is powerful. But this morning I said, Lord God, please let somebody see me. Please and that's my constant prayer. And I've been working on my work, and I'm doing. We're here at the Neoliberal. We're doing a lot of work. We're engaging people. It's moving quickly. And I got a call from Leader Press. I made a prayer this morning. I said, as I said, the first book was independently published, and now today, I created an independent platform, and now I'm having a platform with Leader Press, who is now going to invest, and a hybrid publishing company is now willing to work with me, and we will be working and we will be journeying together. Leader Press and I, we will be journeying together on this new project, on this book project, and I have 3 parts. This particular episode is broken up into or the discussions is broken up into 3 segments, because it's actually this episode is broken up into 4 segments. This is the first segment, which is the introduction, and then the other segments are already recorded, which we will add. So this is the introduction segment, and then there is segment 2, and which is part A, segment 3, which is part B, and then segment 4, which is part C. Okay, and it is quite extensive. It is extensive, but please, I ask you to listen to the podcast in its entirety, because it is deep, it is palpable, it is forceful, it is powerful. It speaks to the issues of humanity and to the rationale behind this study and this book project. So, thank you so much, though, for your support. Thank you. Thank you for your constant support. For those who have been supporting the program and listening to the show, I want to let you know I appreciate you, and continue to watch where we go from here, and see how the divine intervenes and take us to the world. We're building a movement, not a movement to destroy, but a movement to uplift. We're building a brand here where all can be a part of, to facilitate critical and analytical thinking, and provide a platform where you can contribute to the discussion. You can share with us your podcast if you have ideas for podcasts, or if you would like to be a part of the show. Send me an email and let's have a discussion about that, how you can be a part. Send us if you see things happening in community. Send it to me, and I will include that in Street Vibe or in one of our programs. And also, if you have articles and posts and blogs that you want to share, please share your blogs and your post to the Neoliberal Post at RenaldoCMcKenzie.com, RENALDO C as in cat, McKenzie, MCKENZIE.com. Listen, okay, send it to, and we will publish it. We will edit it and publish it. And if it needs work, we will reach out to you and say, hey, this is how you can improve. But I'm inviting you that this is not just a platform for me to engage the world with my research and studies and what has been invested in me so as to empower, but also an opportunity and to provide a perspective so as to serve the world, to solve tomorrow's challenges, but provides an opportunity for you also to share your ideas, and to be a part of what we're doing here. And check out the website and subscribe to the show, and to our affiliates, RenaldoCMcKenzie.blogspot.com, and so on and so forth. And I am looking forward to this, to where we're going, because the sky is the limit, and we have tremendous belief. And we have gotten this far. We have gotten this far through personal funding and so on and so forth. But we will go to but the sky. We're going to move to the sky. Just so you know, by the way, we're having a book signing on Saturday. On Sunday. The book signing is no longer Saturday. It's going to be on Sunday. I will Sunday at Germantown Espresso Bar, 26 Maplewood Mall. Right on Armand Street between Green Street and Germantown Avenue. I will be there. The signing is at 8 o'clock. The book reading is going to be upstairs at 12 noon. That's going to be on Sunday. Now, tomorrow, I'm going to be at Germantown Radio Station, right at Germantown, right at the Maplewood Mall as well. And at 7 a.m. until, I'm not sure what time I will end the interview, but I will be there. And listen to the interview, and I guess I'll be talking more about the book and so on and so forth. So continue to invest in this program. And just so you know, if you would like to donate, we have a donate page, or if you scroll to the bottom of this page, or if you go to the details and go to the bottom, you will see ways you can donate. Thank you so much for listening, and we will break. And the next take you will hear is my conversation with Leader Press, talking about or brainstorming and talking about the new book project. And I have written extensively on the book project already. I already have several, over 100 and 200 pages already of this book written, and I am still working on other stories to include, and so on and so forth. So continue to join it with us. Thank you so much. And after this, you will hear the interview or the discussions I'm having with Leader Press about the new project that we are about to embark on as they invest in this book project. Thank you. Hi, welcome to another episode of the Neoliberal Round podcast. I'm Ronaldo McKenzie. So I want to share a project I'm working on, and I actually just finished a conversation with Leader Press, and Leader Press wants to work with me on a book project that I am embarking on, which actually is what I want to study at, which is the focus of my dissertation at Georgetown University. And they called me today to say they want to help me with the book project I'm working on. And of course, I completed a book already, which you all know. It's Neoliberalism, Globalization, Income Inequality, Poverty and Resistance. And I published that book. That book was published in 2021. That was published by my company, the Neoliberal Corporation, with Palmetto, who did a lot of who helped with the editing. They provided me with editors, a team of editors who worked with me on that book. But that wasn't supposed to be the first book that I published or write and publish. But when I was invited by the Jamaica Theological Seminary to teach Caribbean thought, I was doing some research and I realized that there wasn't any much resources available in terms of local resources and fresh resources, and that speaks to the issue of Caribbean thought and perspective, or you couldn't find much Caribbean perspectives or Caribbean and so on. So I decided to, since I had already did research that I had wanted to submit and to publish as a book, I decided to opt to publish this book. But then the first book I wanted to publish was entitled The Secrets to Unlocking Divine Intervention. I was working on that book, but of course I parked that and submitted this other one for publication, the Neoliberalism book, which was actually two books in one. But as I said to you, I was having a conversation with Leader Press today, and I am meeting with them sometime next week. And I spent some time to flesh out my project. I actually recorded it, and I lost all of the recording, but I recorded it because I was thinking about it, and I made some interesting discoveries. But the book that I want to write, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about it and why it is what it is. The book is called Privilege and Position. It's called Privilege, Power and Position, and the Secrets to Unlocking Divine Intervention. Privilege, Power and Position, and the Secrets to Unlocking Divine Intervention. That's the title of the next book. And I actually did an article which is featured on RonaldoCMcKenzie.com site. It's called The Development of Power, Privilege and Position. The Development of Power, Privilege, Position and Status within the Foundations of Historical Literature and Divine Intervention. But that's not the theme of the book. That was just a paper, or the title of the book. The title of the book is really Power, Privilege, Position and Status, and the Secrets to Unlocking Divine Intervention. So it's going to be a part A and a part B. And again, it has to be that, and it has to be, and it's not the it's not just the development of power privilege and position and status within the foundations of historical literature. But we are looking at the issue of strategy. We're looking at the issue of how power is maintained in society. We are looking at those important issues and how these strategies are utilized to establish, to increase, or to maintain power. And when you study historical literature from the very foundations of society, you will notice that common thread. You will notice this drive to privilege, not necessarily to privilege a position, but to formulate opinions. And nothing is wrong with formulating opinions, but as society evolve and move from generation to generation, there are those who would study or create ideas from what was interpreted, and they would make it normative and find it useful to develop a particular position, which they then exceptionalize and universalize. We're saying that the issues of power create challenges for society. Not necessarily power, but the idea, power and position and status. This is not achieved or realized unless, or this is realized through strategy. We're talking about, and of course that's an issue for society, and these things posed, because what happened is that when we talk about strategy, we're talking about racism, sexism, yes, and all the other issues in society. So those things pose problems for society. And the problem, and nothing is, and let's just say if race was okay, then in the sense that it is because when people start to talk about privilege and position, you talk about race and then you privilege that particular position. And so we are looking at, I believe that in order for society, and I have always said that the challenge of society is the challenge that is found within the dynamics of humanity, the dynamics of human relationships, the dynamics of, because life is about people and how people relate. So almost everything in life on earth involves exchanges between humanity. It's relationship. But these relationships pose a challenge and a problem for society and the advancement of society. When one begins to develop positions and status and the kind of relationship that is based on a top-down approach, a positioning or a pyramid, or some kind of stratosphere and levels. So we study that. So when I wrote this paper, the development of privilege and status and power within the foundations of historical literature, I'm here looking, and I'm not just talking about the foundation. What I'm doing here is I'm studying civilizations, and then studying the evolution of the Western civilization. And of course, you will also have to do a comparative study on the evolution of Eastern civilization. Is it something that is contained in humanity? Because then the conclusion is that means we're prone to do so. But are we prone to do so because of certain psychological conditioning? And it's not necessarily part of human nature. And probably it's part of human nature, this drive to dominate. But there is always the id, the ego, and the superego. There is always this. Who talks about the id, the ego, and the superego? Sigmund Freud, and talks about how we have the id and how that natural drive and instincts, and then there is the superego that balances everything out. So there, and that is what distinguishes the human beings from other species. Because our ability to rationalize, our ability to be able to control our impulses and any natural drive for something, anything that would thwart or disrupt the advancement of society. So we may say, yes, it is part of, when you study societies, you will find that there is this natural drive, and there is, but we have natural drives for everything, but we are also blessed or equipped with a certain intellect and rationality, with consciences. That is the beauty of human being. No matter how extreme we are, no matter our drives and our passions, there is always this other aspect of the human that balances things out so as to preserve life and to advance society. So the argument, so even when we study literature and civilizations and see this propensity, and the way how these civilizations evolve, you will find this natural drive. Even, and I said some time ago, even religion is not untouched with this privilege and this position. But I'm saying that these pose problems for society. But we're looking also at the strategies of power. Racism, sexism, and even religion can be a useful tool. So part A of the book will study, will intentionally study privilege and power and the instances of it. And of course, part B of the book will look at the secrets to unlocking divine intervention. And when I talk about the secrets to unlocking divine intervention, I was saying the book is not really secret. And the second part of the book is anthropological at best. It is anthropological at best. But people, you may say, why did I include in this book a part B with such a topic which seems far-fetched and has nothing to do with the first part of the book, which is looking at the strategies of power to maintain, establish, and increase its position, privilege, and status, and the challenges that pose for society, and the dynamics of human relationships in society. What does that have to do with that? What? Because I'm talking about the secrets to unlocking divine intervention. And I will answer it by saying this: the secrets to unlocking divine intervention is a powerful commentary or ethnographic and anthropological story or material, which because the book talks about the secrets to unlocking divine intervention and shares in a very powerful way a common thread in all faiths and religion, a common thread in all faiths and religion that is utilized or is practiced to realize what the people who we will interview and study have come to interpret as an intervention in their situation, so that they were able to experience catharsis or release or some kind of better perspective or some answers that strengthen their living and that speaks to the issues that they need intervention on, divine intervention. And I don't want it, so I don't want this book to be seen as a rule of thumb or a doctrine or the Bible. Or I don't want it to be seen to privilege this idea or this perspective of how we can come to experience divine intervention in our lives. How we can come to experience God, or however we see God moving in our lives and speaking to very important issues in our lives. So that is what, so I have to situate that particular part of the book, or that topic. I have to situate that topic about the secrets to unlocking divine intervention within the wider discussion, because here am I talking about privilege and power and status, and that we shouldn't exceptionalize, because human beings have a tendency to come to formulate an opinion about something based on their limited and subjective interpretation, based in analysis, and then create doctrines and exceptionalize and universalize their findings or their experiences to the point of saying that this is the ideal, and if there is any other opinion, if there's any other way, then there's a problem. So I situate the secrets to unlocking divine intervention within the second part of within this book that I'm writing, because I want people to also understand that The secret to unlocking divine intervention is not a perspective that is that is that is rooted in privilege. It's not a perspective that was handed down to me by the divine and he says or she says or it says that this is how it should be. Because what I believe is that, and this book is not just for Christians, I have said, The Secret to Unlocking Divine Intervention. Because I am going to study, interview, and journey with with people, several different people from various faith experience, and I've already started to do that. Because there are some people who connect with God through a rock. There are people who connect with God through Allah. There are people who connect with God through Judaism and through Christianity, or the Buddha, or Krishna, yes, or they might be Rasta, glorifying Rastafari, and so on and so forth. And what I have said is that is okay if you want to. I find Christianity useful, but that's not what is important when considering and reflecting on the secrets to unlocking divine intervention, because all these various experiences and all these peoples from these various experiences will tell you that they have experienced divine intervention in their lives based on the guideposts that they have utilized within their grouping or within their systems of belief. But that, as I said, there's a common thread, and there's also another perspective that I would want to provide, which is relevant, and which people will find useful in this book. It is powerful because it speaks to the issue of interpretation and revelation. It speaks to the issue of interpretation and revelation. And it speaks to that issue. But in this book, we never dilute. We will never dilute anybody's experience, because as I said to you before, everybody have a particular reality, but we are limited with what we know within this vast universe. We are limited with, and so there are those who will pray to a people. So what I found is that there are people who might pray to a stone, saying that they're praying to God, and there are those who would say, and there are those probably some other religious people would say, oh, they're dumb, they have no sense. How could anybody be praying to a rock? A rock is an inanimate object with no intellect and so on. But we miss the point here. Because we have been ethnocentric, using our own values to judge somebody, because those very same people could say, we are dumb. How could we use a make-up story about somebody who does not exist? Or so we have to be careful about, because we're being ethnocentric, using our own systems, using our own values and our principles to impose on others. And that's not what I'm trying to do here. That's not what I'm trying to do here when I talk about the secrets to unlocking divine intervention. But it's going to be powerful. I'm going to share some powerful stories with you. How I have prayed in a particular way, and God has intervened, and God has provided the answer. I will share with you stories, powerful stories, and I have come up with 10 just general guides or principles or steps that I find useful when seeking divine intervention, which you may find useful. And I will share that with you in this book, and share stories that speaks to these 10 principles or I don't, I say principles or steps or guides or whatever you may call it, because as I said, I'm trying not to make it a rule of thumb, but you may find them to be very, very helpful, and I will share them with you in that book. And the book is going to be detailed, because I will make comparisons between the various, at least 8 or 10 different people who I am doing ethnographic work with, and people who I'm studying, and will share their stories, share their journey with you, my journeys and stories with you, and reveal to you, and of course develop on those 7 to 10 steps. Of course, one of the things, and I'm going to reveal to you one step, and if you read The Secrets to Unlocking Divine Intervention, the featured paper, I talk about it. Don't be selfish. In seeking the divine intervention, to what end do we need divine intervention? Is it for personal gain? Because of course, I've always talked about what is the ultimate of all things, that we are able to live together as one. I think that's the greatest miracle. I think that was what was intended, that we can all come together, not for humanity to create systems that compete with each other. And nothing is wrong with competition, because competition is healthy. What happens when we start to exceptionalize and treat the other as less than, and develop unfair strategies, unfair tactics, and then develop rules and make those tactics rules, or after we have developed unfair tactic and reached a competitive advantage, then we develop rules that will all but ensure that we maintain our privilege and our position and our power, yes, we develop rules, and we develop WTOs and organizations that is at best rules and agreements that's supposed to promote globalization or unity or togetherness and so on. But at the end, what does it promote? The continuation of the few over the many, or to protect those who already have maintained or gained competitive advantages in the world. And of course, that's what neoliberalism is about. When looking at the global south, global north dynamic, that's more an economic analysis. But then this book now looks at it now from looking at principles, looking at the principles, and looking at the theory, and looking at history and in historical literature, and looking at how this inequality that we talk about in my first book, Neoliberalism, how this global north, global south dynamic, what principles drive that. And of course, I talk about the Protestant ethic. Capitalism, there was a Protestant ethic in capitalism of hard work. That was what Max Weber said guided capitalism, the Protestant ethic, working hard, and when you work hard, you get profit. But of course, I argue that's no longer the ethic that guides capitalist society. The kind of capitalism we have is not a Protestant ethic. It's now one of nepotism and greed, and so on and so forth. Nepotism and greed. But of course, in this book, I am saying that this greed and this drive for privilege and position is actually not new. If you study the foundations of society, you see this drive for privilege, for position. But of course, it's the way in which it is practiced has evolved. The way in which it is practiced has changed. And we will mention that. And in fact, what I need to also say is that The Protestant, there was, in fact, when Max Weber said that there was a Protestant ethic, the Protestant ethic was not for everyone. The Protestant ethic was for the few. Only few people work hard, because the nobility and so on, and the Protestant ethic was in theory. It didn't really guide society. Only some people were supposed to work hard, and others benefit from the hard work of others. So that's the kind. That's the kind of the society we have. This Protestant. You see what I'm talking about? Have to as I think about it and read and explore. You see and come to and analyze and critique and use various methods to critique and to study history. You see, you get to come to various conclusions. So I haven't talked about looking at it from an economic basis, looking at global north, global south dynamics, and then you study the Western civilization and also do comparisons. Of course, we will. Not only am I going to talk about looking at studying Western civilizations and looking at Homer, St. Augustine, and so on and so forth, and looking at how these ideas took shape and develop and evolve in privilege, power, status. The first part of the book. Not only are we contending for that, though, looking at how power develops and takes form in society. And when in doing so, we're also going to make comments, and we're going to also come to certain discoveries, because as we move from you notice a pattern, move from certain themes. You're talking about strategically. You're moving from religion was found to be very normative and useful in society. Then, of course, now science is the normative thing. Science is the rule of thumb. You appeal to science. Society finds various things useful to appeal to so I'm talking about how these things evolve and take form, but also you look at how we move from talking about war to talking about love. Yes, talking about Achilles to talking about Christ, and then moving from various epochs, Greek and Rome, to various Europe and various societies, various epochs in societies. Various countries dominate in various civilizations as we evolve. But not only that, certain principles that are normative, that those change as well. Because, say for example, religion was men appeal to religion, but as society evolved, they appeal to something else. That also, that the change in what we find normative and the things we appeal to, is also useful when we study power, privilege, and status, and its strategies, and how these strategies evolve. Because race, I said race is a pseudoscience, was a principle on the shelves in an article some time ago, which someone discovered and found to be useful, and worked in to the whole strategy of this goal to dominate, when Europe was trying to dominate and to control and to dominate sugar and so on and so forth, and they needed, everybody was racing against time and wanted to dominate the other and to make profit for profit, supernormal profit. So of course they appealed to science, and of course one time people appealed to religion, but now some people, you can't appeal to religion anymore. They don't find religion. And some time ago I was having a conversation with someone. I said the people do not believe in God because they do not, because of what human beings have made God out to be, or because people don't understand the idea of God and how, because there might be a divine, that which is beyond us. But we connect with that which is beyond us in various ways. People might even want to connect with the beyond, with that which is beyond, by finding useful, yes, connecting with the universe through Darwinism, through meditation, or through the mind, or they abandon belief in a God that they don't know about, into a belief where they connect with society, with life, through the existence of the reality that is in front of them. And so, as I said, some people connect with God through a stone, but because for them the stone is not necessarily God, but that is how they connect. That is what they use to make sense of a reality that is beyond them. So and that is important here. But so when I talk about the secrets to unlocking divine intervention, it is powerful. I will reveal some powerful things to you in the second part of the book. Experiences that people have. And we will not be ethnocentric. We will not apply Occidentalism or Orientalism to dilute anyone's experience. Because as we understand, the world is vast, and people's realities are powerful in the sense that they are aware of their experiences. They are aware of their experiences probably through history and what they have been told. But in a sense, people who feel strongly about divine intervention and the experiences they have, their experiences are treated as fantastic because we have found useful a strategy in science that does not subscribe to a particular, or can make sense to a particular reality or experience. So now we use our understanding of science, or our understanding of all things, based on a science that we have accepted, to develop, to judge other person and to dilute their experience. And we say, oh, that is coincidental. That is coincidental. It's, we never think that science can also be accused of being ethnocentric in its criticisms and judgments of all things, because it uses its beliefs, its theories, and opinion about things to make judgment about another, because the other does not subscribe to its values and value judgments, to its principles and its ways. And not only that, just as in Christianity and in various denominations, they create a doctrine that they exceptionalize or create certain rules of thumb. That if everybody don't subscribe to that rule of thumb, then they're going to hell or something will happen. So science also, when we arrive at science, And when science started to become normative, a normative principle, what happened? They took a page out of religion, which was always the strategy, so that science can become exceptional. You see, that's what happened. In order to make science what science is today, which is the yardstick or the rule of thumb, so to speak. People look to science for answers. Science is, in a sense, the end all and the be all. In a sense, and what happened? Science, just as our religion and Christianity and the various religions, they were trying to be normative and dominant, and they developed values and principles that exceptionalize their doctrines and beliefs and religion. Even within science, as science was wanted to be a dominant. As science grow, they develop certain exceptional principles that say, and that if any other principle does not subscribe to that principle, then it is not fact. So people can only arrive at fact by applying certain scientific principles. And if those scientific principles and laws are not appealed to, then it is considered as fake, nonsensical, refutable, on the fringes, unacademic or non-academic. Yes? Fantastic, myth. So science is also privileging itself, but science then become a useful strategy, so that those who already, which affects the dynamics in human society, or the relational values in society, or because then science becomes a tool that can be utilized to justify a particular behavior, so as to maintain a particular dynamic in society. So that, say for example, you cannot talk about a bush doctor or a herbalist. Science, say my mom has thymoma, and they were, it's been 6 or 5 years or 6 years, and they have cut one of her lungs. And when they cut one of her lungs, they said, trying to get rid of the thymoma, they said, they didn't do a good job, or what they did, they allowed an opening and it affected the other side. Then, but we thought she was okay, but a year later she was back in the hospital. Then she did chemo. Chemo destroyed her and so on, but she did radiation. And, it was a very difficult experience. And then she finished radiation, and then we thought everything was fine. And then she's back again, and now she did chemo. She did chemo. But I wanted to lift up a point. My mom was I was doing some research and some study about treatment and various kind of treatments. And just so you know, I am suspicious of everything. I don't care if you're a medical doctor or an academic or Plato. We have a responsibility to analyze and critique everything, because everything is a perspective. Everything is a perspective that is arrived at and in utilizing certain subjective interpretive tools that people find value for themselves, because there is one interpretation and there's another interpretation. And sometimes you have to be careful. So I spoke with I went to one of the I was exploring herbal treatment. And so I found two things to be very useful: Vita fungi and medicinal mushroom, which I think the vital fungi helps to repair the body from the chemo, and the medicinal mushroom helps to clear the body of toxins. And I approached the doctor, the oncologists, and the treatment team about it, and they quickly shut it down without any room for debate or consideration. No room. There are people who have said, "Oh, it works." There are people who find value in herbal treatment, but we will never know what the efficacy of herbal treatment, because society has accepted science as normative and has debunked any kind of herbalist or any alternative kind of treatment as myth or unresearchable or unverifiable. You cannot, it doesn't subscribe to certain scientific laws, so we can't consider it. We've gotten reports that 300 people, but it hasn't been confirmed by science. If science doesn't confirm a particular idea, a particular practice, a particular study, a particular pattern, a particular discovery, then it is considered not unscientific. It's considered myth. It is considered ineffective, in fact, and dangerous. So this is to the point I'm making. So science now. Please remember before the Enlightenment, the papacy or the church in Europe, was provided, was God's truth was all truth. And by the way, I should not say that. The church's truth about God, about all things, is the only truth. So when Galileo and these other guys come up with talking about the earth not being flat but being circumferenced or sphere or whatever, or tilted on an axis and so on, and when they found that the earth wasn't at the center of the universe, wasn't the center of the universe, but that we were part of, and that the planets didn't operate how they said it was. That was a problem. It was a problem. The church did not accept science. The church did not accept science and any kind of scientific discovery. You'll be persecuted or burnt at the stake. That's hearsay, yes? Because what was normative? The church, God, religion. And then as society evolves and move away from that, there were more discoveries about the earth. And then I guess science thought that they were right. So because they were right, then I guess they won dominance for the day. And so they took over as the normative, because they scored a victory over religion, over Christianity, over the church, because they got some things right that we had thought about illnesses and diseases and psychosis and so on and so forth. Science got some things right. And and even using epidemiological stuff, the way we do study today and do research to arrive at truth. So science is saying the way how we arrive at truth, the way how we study, we are more rigorous. We apply more rules and principles. Yes? And what we create, and in fact it is objective. It is objective. There's no subjectivity about the mind and God. You can arrive at truth without by creating a particular method where you have a control group and a study group. And certain factors are held constant and hurt. But can I tell you, who is manipulating the factors? So science has become what religion was. They have assumed that all truth is what science can prove through their scientific study and their way of seeing things. And if science cannot study it in the way how science studies and look at things, then it is not true. There is value in religion. There is value in Christianity has aided society, but it has also created tremendous problems and challenges for society, and I believe, in my estimation, that society would have been more advanced. And then we move from really to science. So when we talk about this whole, and then of course we can point it right back to the whole COVID issue, where if some medical doctors could not speak against COVID. There were medical doctors who did not believe the science about COVID and the vaccine. And we create laws. Can I tell you, the same thing that they did, the church did in the 1600s, in the Dark Ages, when they would burn people at the stake for not subscribing to church doctrine. Scientists are now doing, or the society is now doing, and they create and medical science. They have an association who they give credentials and they give license. You talk about privilege and position and connectionism. If you don't subscribe to a particular science as a scientist, then you are no longer a scientist. Because you see, it threatens the reputation of the institution. Because, what am I talking? Privilege, power, and position in society. Privilege, power, and position. So if you question science, or if you question or doubt science, then what happens is that science, you question it, you're threatening the very position. Even with the nobility and the monarchy, there are some, the monarchy, in a monarchical society followed certain rules, and so there are certain behaviors and practice that they have to abide by, because they want to preserve the reputation of the monarchy. But the monarchy, they are pure, yes, they are godly. And so they can't marry outside, and they can't, and so on. And there are certain rules that human beings created so as to promote, to establish, to maintain, or to preserve power, to establish, to maintain, or to increase power. Ideas, because having a monarchical rule probably was good for society at the time, but I'm not saying it was good at the time, but I'm just saying that there might be value in these strategies. These are strategies. I'm talking about strategies. Religion, these are strategies, in a sense, strategies, or can be utilized as strategies, based on how they are positioned, how they are created, and what they say about themselves. when they exceptionalize themselves, then they become, then the power base are probably the people who are part of the people who are advancing the. I'm fleshing out my new book, which is Privilege, Power, Status and Position, and the Secrets to Unlocking Divine Intervention. And I was making the point before the interruption just now that society when you study society, at its core, this drive, this privilege, this power, you see it everywhere. But I'm saying that, right, science, even within science has privileged itself so as to maintain its divinity, so to speak, its purity, so as to maintain its reputation, so as to maintain its appeal in the world, so as to give its supporters, its investors, and its main sponsors the tool it's used, the fuel it needs to maintain its power, its privilege, and status in society. Those who are its main sponsors, the people who give it, who supply the resources necessary to conduct its research and its findings, and so on. They are providing a return on investment. Because now those who form the power base in society are able to use science to advance a particular practice so as to commandeer wide appeal at the expense of others to preserve its position. Science is useful, but it should never privilege its position. So the point I was making, that so they would not consider my mom using any kind of herbal therapy at all. They wouldn't even talk about it or study it or anything. And so, but can I tell you, maybe if herbal science or herbal therapy or bush doctors, so to speak, because I think they are willing to come together with medical science and science in general can come together and work with religion and work with bush doctors and herbalists, maybe we would be in a better position as a society on a whole. But the problem is, there's a problem with that, because it would affect people's position. It would affect certain privileges. And it would affect certain status in society. So this book is powerful because it looks at the ideological basis and the rationale. behind human relationships in society. And and the problems of society, the challenges of the 21st century continues. Because as much as we have progress in society and in life, as much as we have progress, look at what's going on in Ukraine today. Look, no, people's lives have been destroyed, eviscerated. All those complexes and industrial buildings and homes and edifices and all the creations, and just in blow up in just in one man, because Putin and Russia has a certain value and belief that they are trying to protect, and not all, and their prejudice, and their privilege over their position makes them suspicious of the West, and those other countries who he considers are part of Russia are allowing Western values to penetrate. So he's going to bomb another country who, as if they are not sovereign, and they don't have certain positions and an idea about what they want. So that's the point. So as much as we have had advance in society, society is at a thread. Society is being held when I said, what is the ultimate of all things? The ultimate of all things is that we live together as one, with all our individualities, given all our individualities, that will become one with reality. That will become one with reality in all of our individualities. A man once said, once you label me, you negate me. Negate me. And that's what has happened. Putin has labeled the West. He has labeled Ukraine. Yes? Republicans have labeled Democrats, and Democrats labeled Republicans. Okay? Black people label white people label, labels. And there is this negation of the other. And not just once you negate me, but it sets up, and once you negate me, it sets up an opportunity for tension, but not good tension, but tension that leads to destruction of the other. So this study is important. Society is being held by a threat. So I have said, say for example, how do we fix these issues? Say for example, Florida has sought to put a ban on students feeling guilt for something on the history. But while some people like some black scholars and so on, Dana Barians, are thinking about reimagining black people so that they lift up the positive side of history and look at them resistance as a way to restore their soul value. Talk about soul value. Okay, looking at their soul value. Those are some of the ways people are probably trying to resolve some of the issues. And while I'm really against the ban in a sense, but I'm saying if we can do that, if we can put a ban on something like that, or if we can reimagine education so that we promote, we reinvent something of the past so as to generate positive images for the future. Yes? If we can do that, those are good steps. But can we do something bold as well? We can also get rid of race and certain categories and certain conditioning. We can get rid of that propensity to privilege to the point of desperation, to the point of threat. Society would be And of course people might say, oh, you're talking about heaven, you're talking about, because there are people who truly believe that there is no way that society can be united. There is no way that you can get rid of privilege and position in society. And who are those who believe that? Those who enjoy privilege and position in society. Because I just, and I'm going to include in the book that I had two examples. I had two interviews. I did two interviews, random interviews with two different individuals. One was a businessman and one was a black woman. One come from a certain standard of living, a lower standard of living, the other was a high standard. And the one Okay, welcome back. I'm talking about my new book that I'm working on, a new book project, and I had a meeting recently with Leader Press, and I am about to engage Leader Press. I'm about to partner with Leader Press to publish a book. And by the way, one of the things I said to the gentleman who I spoke with at Leader Press was that he wanted to know if I wanted a ghostwriter. Ghostwriters are people who write for you when you don't have time to write. You just give them your ideas and everything, and they'll write for you. Okay, so I am, but they're going to be speaking with me about we are about to work on a book project together, and I said, no, I do not want ghostwriters to write for me. I write for myself. I'll never let ghostwriters write for me. I love to write. I'm very passionate. I'm very passionate about what I'm talking about, and I'm very focused and directed. I'm very focused and I'm very directed. So I know exactly what I want to write about. So I do not let anyone write for me. I write for myself because I'm very passionate and I have a way of writing, which I'm academic, but I do not believe in following the letter of the law. I do not believe in that. So I will deliberately have a grammatical error, because I do not want to privilege any. Because the important thing in the 21st century is communication. Once communication has happened, but sometimes if you have too much grammatical error, it can communicate the wrong thing. Okay, and of course there are people I find profoundly useful, as again is my good friend Gramsci. I find Gramsci's writing very important on intellectualism, talking about how intellects can privilege a position as well. But I have a responsibility as someone who have been provided with certain discoveries and study certain things, to share what I have studied and what I have arrived at. And I'm asking others to consider this. But I was sharing a story just now about two individuals. One, a black woman who I interviewed, and another, a Caucasian Jewish businessman. One living in the suburbs in a very wealthy neighborhood. A businessman who owns his own business, and one woman who works as a caretaker within a vulnerable community in Philadelphia. I mean, she's a working class woman in a sense, but they have two different perspectives. This black woman, Lisa, she said, yes, there is a problem in society. There is income inequality. There is issues of race and privilege and so on. And she had, and you speak with, and there is a problem with privilege. So those who are affected by privilege and status, yes, will tell you it's not normal in society. to have privilege and position and status. And then, of course, and if when you study the Plato and so on, so he talked about the Republic, he advocates for an egalitarian society that is not equal. Even in advocating for an egalitarian society, in a sense, or an ideal society in the Republic, he still privileged the philosopher, because he's a philosopher. Moving away from the original Greek identity of lifting up the warrior hero. So so this book is, I'm having a deep conversation about human dynamics. So this black woman, Lisa, said they had a problem, but the white Caucasian Jewish gentleman did not have a problem with that, with privilege, with position. Did not have a problem with that at all, with privilege and position and status. In fact, some people say that they want to keep their white privilege. Who was it that said it on a ESPN sports show? I believe somebody said it on an ESPN sports show. But I am not for keeping any position. I am not for normalizing any useful conclusion from an interpretation, or using interpretive methods to form conclusions about an experience I've had, but neither will anyone dilute my experience because they don't know, they can't come into my mind, which is what Descartes was trying to allude to. They can't come into my mind to see, to experience that, to connect with that. If you look at you can't go into somebody. The individual is unique. So, and even after he has shared with you his experience, there's something at a deeper level. The experience of it is real to him. When something has happened to someone, that experience is real to him or her, and it connects with that person in a profound way. And some people talk about how God has revealed himself to them in a particular way. And probably God uses their experience being than that which nothing greater can be conceived or imagined. God being than that which nothing greater can be conceived or imagined. Use their limited experience to reveal him or herself or it to individuals based on their subjective experience. And we receive it based on the place where we are. But then when we share it as normative and what is, instead of this. You understand the point I'm making here? So it is important for me to let you know that you will find value in the secrets to unlocking divine intervention, because the stories and the experiences are palpable and powerful, and you may find some of it useful in your own lives, and you may even practice it in your own lives, and you may experience and realize catharsis. But I am going to write that particular book will be part of a wider book, so that I have part A and part B. Part A will study the historical foundations and look at the dynamics of society and how the position uses certain strategies, and how those strategies are used to create, to increase, to maintain privilege, power, and position. But how those, but also challenge for society, which we're talking about the challenge, it also creates income inequality and poverty. It also creates what? Income inequality and poverty. And we have already presented research that shows this income inequality and poverty and the global south, global north dynamic that creates poverty in the world, and this bureaucratic phenomenon where do as I do but not as I say, which is part of the international arrangements. Globalization, which is the movement of goods and services across borders. According to economists and politicians and so on, is only possible when you liberalize your economies. When you liberalize your economies, break down certain barriers, any kind of barriers. We talk about deunionization and certain government red tape, tariffs, removing certain kind of investment controls, and so on and so forth. And then, of course, WTO was implemented in the world. The World Trade Organization, where people came together, countries came together to develop some kind of international agreement, some guide, a principle that would facilitate globalization, but that they would all agree to abide by so as to facilitate fair game. And of course, you had the structural adjustment policies that was developed to help to also facilitate this, and this was done through the IMF. When we talk about structural adjustment, we're talking about the same thing, liberalizing. And if you read Neoliberalism, Globalization, Income Inequality, you will find that structural adjustment policies to liberalize countries, and they develop the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, and the World Bank to provide loans to smaller states or states to help them so that they can be a part of this global economy. So they gave them this loans, but they should not have given them loans. Because they gave them loans with exorbitant interest rates. These countries of the global south, exorbitant interest rates. I talk about this in the book that I wrote, in my book, Neoliberalism. Exorbitant interest rates. So, that they couldn't pay back. And not only that, set certain conditions for the loan. Say, for example, they could not subsidize their farmers. And the end all of everything was that instead of helping these countries, aiding their ability so that they can effectively participate in globalization, what these policies actually did was push them back, made them vulnerable, dependent states that could not actually compete, but they could in fact open up their economies and flood them out. And they were expected to abide by international agreements that these countries came up with, that all these countries, but guess what? The big countries didn't have to follow these rules, because the post-industrial countries were subsidizing their farmers. The post-industrial countries were subsidizing but at the same time they were telling global south countries they can't do it, and it's part of the agreement. That is the bureaucratic phenomenon developed by Michael Crozier. And I talk about that in my book, Neoliberalism, Globalization, Income Inequality, Poverty and Resistance. I talk about that phenomenon, that dynamic. And this is not a new dynamic. It's because I've always talked about this issue of Pharisaicalism. If you study Jewish history, if you study Jewish history, there was a sect of Jews that were called Pharisees. And the Pharisees were said to be strict. And they followed the letters of the law, and they were teachers or scribes, and they followed the letters of the law, and they preached abiding by the law. But guess what? The same law that they preached, the same law that they were strict to ensure that all abide, or to point out when you don't follow it to the T or exclusively, it didn't apply to them because they did not practice what they preach. It is as if they were saying, do as I say but not as I do. They were being hypocritical or duplicitous. That's okay, and that is the issue of power, privilege, position, and status in society. Because tools are created and utilized. You know, the Prime Minister of Jamaica, the former Prime Minister of Jamaica in 1992, in a budget debate, or 93 budget debate, the Honorable Percival James Patterson, he said, the law is not a shackle. Yes, the law is not a shackle for people in power. The law is just created to help, yes, they said so that society can function. But for some reason, there's a problem when the rules of society doesn't apply to everyone. And that's why you had the Black Lives Matter movement march, because something is wrong where some people were being incarcerated even, and were being to the point of violence, and others weren't. And it's a particular people who were black-skinned people, and I'm going to start using black-skinned instead of black people so as to move away from race. Black-skinned people were being incarcerated, and in fact in Philadelphia, they have changed the law where police now cannot stop people for minor traffic offenses. And the reason why they do that is because more often than not, black-skinned people are always affected because of their economic position in society. They are always affected by these stops. So you see how, and they're saying that when you and a study was done that over the past 10 years, over a period of 10 years, with the arrests that was done, 78% of all the arrests in Pennsylvania or Philadelphia, 78% of the people arrested were black people. And only 1% of them, only 1% of those cases were actual cases. 1%. 1% were led to any kind of real convictions or charges or so on. 1%. Affecting all those people, because just as time is money, just so you know, time is money in America and in capitalism. Time is money. So just so you know, the 78%, the 77% of the black people who were incarcerated or who were charged and so on, their lives were disrupted, and they could have made money and done other things. That's lost time, lost money. There goes affecting. They already have an economic problem. They already lack money, and already they need time to make money, and already they have to be dealing with law enforcement, which already push. And just so you know, I talk about the fact that global North countries were already at an advantage, and I need to add this point. And they developed rules, and I talk about that in my book, Neoliberalism. They developed rules at this juncture, at this point of the game, because we talk about development. Economic development follows stages. There are stages to economic development. Again, there are stages there's a precondition for takeoff. There's takeoff, and so on. There are stages. So certain countries were already at an advanced stage of their development. But yet still, they came together to form the WTO and these international arrangements to facilitate global trade. But they were already at an advanced stage in society. So then you can't expect those who are behind because of unfair practices already to follow the same rules. Because because you already have an advantage, so they must follow certain rules, such as global warming. Global warming is one example. Certain developing countries said they will not abide by this this green emissions policy, so because especially these post-industrial countries want to now have certain policies and rules to protect the ozone and to limit the amount of emissions. After they have already destroyed the ozone by doing what they did, and now they have reached a level of industrialization where they don't need to do that. But the other countries who are still in the preconditioned stage, or the developing, going through, have to still, or still in the industrial stage where they're emitting, and that's China's defense. China was making that argument. And some persons were upset, were saying, how is it that the US, we should abide by certain rules, but China can't, and other countries, because some of these, but in these other countries' defense, they're saying, you have already achieved takeoff, and you are at a competitive advantage. How can we compete with you now by following rules that you set up now when you are already at an advantage? We will continue to be behind. So this is we will give you a loan. We will lend you money then. And that continues. So that are you seeing what? And if I'm at read Neoliberalism, Globalization, Income Inequality, Poverty and Resistance, I talk about that. And that is why this book is important, because it leads into this, because we're looking at this. What is it that creates these dynamics? Studying these dynamics will help you to arrive at an understanding about how power is maintained in the world. Studying these dynamics will help you to understand how power is maintained, how it is created, and how it is augmented by using strategy. And that is what this book will do when I look at privilege, power, position, and status, and begin by looking at its evolution, looking at how it takes form, looking at it within the very by looking at the very foundation of Western civilization, looking at oral traditions, then written traditions, looking at various periods from the patristic to the medieval and so on, Renaissance and Reformation, the Dark Ages and so on, looking at this and how, as society evolves and as we go from one civilization to the next, the things that we find normative and that we appeal to change, but what doesn't change is their usefulness as a strategy to maintain, establish, and to augment power. That does not change. And another thing that we find is that when we move from one epoch to another, and one principle to another, or one discipline to another, or from one normative value, or one normative or authoritative discipline to another, what happens is that they create. Human beings have a tendency to create some exceptional rule, to universalize and exceptionalize the principle or the authority, because of course it becomes an authority. And I was saying to you not in a few minutes ago that that's exactly what they did with COVID. I mean, sorry, not what they did with COVID. They didn't do that with COVID. And many persons unfriend me and stop following me because of my views about COVID, and I don't understand. And that's what I'm talking about. They don't share your views. They unfriend you. There are people who have other views. Don't share my views. I'm not unfriending anyone. I'm not unfriending anyone. That's not important, because, nothing is wrong, as I said to you. Life is colorful. The beauty of life, and I'm a student of interdisciplinary studies, I said I'm a liberal arts and liberal studies, so the book will be interdisciplinary. And of course, I'm doing a doctor of liberal studies, and and my academic journeys in life, except for when I did my first 2 degrees, is interdisciplinary. It looks at human values, issues of human values and ethics. And this book, the title of the book is entitled this because the book is looking at human values and ethics, issues of human values of ethics. And this book is relevant and this book is important because it has everything to do with issues and challenges of human value and ethics, which speaks to the issue of human progress, the continuity and the survival of humanity. Because as I said to you, what is the problem? That human beings today, we are being held on by a very thread. We are at the precipice of a catastrophe. There was World War I and World War II, which stymied growth in a sense. As much as we want to believe that people argue that war is necessary because war brings about development, because there's this building and construction that takes place. That is an argument for convenience and for people who find value in war, for people who find value in making money off war, people who find value in development. And that is it. If we never had World War I and World War II, we cannot foresee a world that was progressing towards the realization of a better life. And that's the point I'm making here. People are conditioned to think that war is necessary because it brings about, you know why? Because we are just saying that now because this is the 21st century. We didn't live in World War I. We didn't live in World War II. We didn't live in those. Okay, we weren't devastated and affected by war the way those countries were and those peoples were. And the things that humanity suffered and went through. Look at what's going on in Ukraine. What are they saying now? What if we were living in Ukraine and so on? So, that is an argument from convenience. That is an argument from convenience. An argument that makes light a past that they are far removed from. And a past whose reality is far removed from them, because that's the reality of the people that live in that reality, in that past, that experienced World War I or World War II, will tell you the human being was not going through progress. And it's as if we had to start life all over again. And we would have been at a much better place today. It would have been a better place. So today. So it is important and that we begin to start we continue to look at privilege, power, and status, because I'm quite sure there have been several books and writings and essays about privilege, power, and status. But I'm taking it a little bit further. And I will be working with Leader Press. I'm looking forward to the experience. And I'm really looking forward to the experience. And I told Leader Press that this is going to be good because I'm also conducting research at Georgetown University, and my research that I'm doing, part of it is also but I don't know if, depending on how soon quickly they want the book to be published, because if they want the book to be published within at least a year time, then I guess I'm gonna have to get cracking. That means I'm gonna have to finish my PhD within 1 or 2 years time, defend the PhD, because I'm gonna have to defend it, because this will be my big part, defend it, and then have it or come up with another topic for my dissertation, and just come up with another topic for my dissertation. while I conduct this, but while I work on this. But thank you so much for listening to my my dissertation, or the rough draft of my dissertation, or of my new book or books. Thank you for listening to it, because and as I said to you, that is why I'm talking about privilege, and that is why I situate now this part B of the book will be about privilege, power, and the secrets to unlocking divine intervention, because I do not want you to move away with the idea that I'm privileging a particular position or making it into a doctrine or a rule of thumb. But it is a palpable experience that I am positive you will find beneficial for your own lives as you read it. Thank you so much for listening to the Neoliberal Realm podcast. I hope you have a great day. Take care.